You ever look at a map of global embassies and just notice gaps? I mean, not every country has a diplomatic mission in every other nation, but that doesn't mean the lines of communication are dead. So, how do these relationships actually work when there's no building? Let's get right into it. So, that gets us to the big question for this whole explainer. Why are there these gaps on the embassy map? Is it some kind of political snub, a sign of a bad relationship? Well, the answer is actually a lot simpler and way more practical than you might think.
And here's the solution to the puzzle.
Instead of building an office absolutely everywhere, countries use this kind of hub-and-spoke model. A single embassy will often represent its country in several nations all at once. And it's not weird or unusual, it's a completely normal and widespread practice in modern diplomacy. So let's break down what this is actually called and how it all works. We're going to dive into the world of the multi-country embassy. Okay, so let's get a clear definition. A multi-country embassy is physically located in one host nation, but, and this is the key part, it has the official legal authority to manage relationships with a whole bunch of other countries, usually in the same region. You can think of it like having one main office that serves an entire territory. So this means you have one ambassador who's based in a single capital, but they are the official representative for multiple countries. They are, for all intents and purposes, a regional ambassador. Their portfolio covers an entire area, not just one country. And listen, this isn't just some casual handshake deal. It's a really formal process. First, the ambassador presents their credentials in the country where they're based. Then, they have to do the same thing for each and every non-resident state they're going to cover. It's only after all that is done that they are fully accredited and have the legal right to do their job across the whole region. It's that legal foundation that makes the entire system work. Okay, so why bother? Why do countries do this at all? Why not just build an embassy in every single capital? Well, as you can probably guess, it all comes down to some very practical, real-world reasons. Well, number one, and this won't surprise you, it's about money. Running an embassy is incredibly expensive. This model also makes a ton of sense for countries that just have smaller diplomatic teams to begin with, or in places where security is a real concern. And sometimes, hey, simple geography just makes it more logical to work from a central regional hub. So who's doing this the most? It's really a go-to strategy for small and medium-sized states. It lets them have a global presence without completely breaking the bank. Superpowers, on the other hand, tend to do this less, mostly because they just have the massive resources to maintain separate embassy networks all over the globe. Okay, but this brings up a pretty big question, right? If the ambassador isn't physically there every single day, how does the work actually get done? Well, that brings us to this idea of diplomacy on the move. And yeah, that's really the heart of it. It's all about travel. This entire model is built on it. The ambassador and their staff, they don't just sit in the capital city of their resident country, they are constantly moving around their entire designated region. So you can imagine, a diplomat's schedule on these trips is just packed. We're talking high-level meetings with government officials, attending key state events, filing important reports back home, and being ready to respond to any urgent consular issues that pop up. And they're not out there totally alone. They're usually supported by a network of what are called honorary consuls, who are often prominent local citizens, and these folks can handle some of the day-to-day stuff and provide that really crucial on-the-ground presence. All right, but of course, this model isn't perfect. It has its challenges. So it's important we understand its limitations and also clear up a couple of common myths that you hear about it. I mean, the most obvious limitation is that you just can't have the same level of daily, moment-to-moment interaction that a resident embassy can provide. You're not there for every small meeting or cultural event. And if a major crisis hits, your ability to help citizens on the ground might be a bit more limited than if you had a full embassy right there. And this quote right here just sums it up perfectly. Think of multi-country embassies as coverage solutions. They make sure that diplomatic representation exists, for sure, but they are not, and they were never intended to be, full one-to-one substitutes for a permanent embassy. Okay, now let's talk about the myths. Here's a big one. If a country covers your nation from a neighboring state, it must mean the relationship is weak. The reality? Nope, not at all. More often than not, it's just a sign of smart, efficient budgeting. All right, here's another one you hear, that this is some kind of second-class diplomacy. Again, totally not true. Remember that whole accreditation process we talked about? Diplomatic status comes from that formal, legal recognition. It has nothing to do with the size or location of a building. So, as we start to wrap this all up, let's really nail down the single most important idea from this entire explainer.
So, if you take away just one thing, let it be this. Diplomacy is fundamentally about the legal relationship between countries. The physical location of an office is just a logistical detail. It's the accreditation that truly matters.
And once you get that, it really unlocks the whole concept of non-resident ambassadors and the entire practice of mobile diplomacy. It shows that relationships are built on engagement and legal standing, not just on real estate. And that brings us right back to where we started. That embassy map, it isn't actually missing anything. The diplomatic connections are all there. They're just expressed through legal accreditation, which you can't always see as a pin on a map. Which kind of leaves us with one final thought to chew on. In an age of instant digital communication, of virtual meetings, is the whole idea of a physical diplomatic mission going to become even less important? Will diplomacy itself become even more borderless? Definitely something to think about.